My name is Marcus Delvine and I am from Atlanta, Georgia. Born and raised right there in the heart of the South, grew up in a household where faith was not just something you talked about on Sundays, it was something you lived every single day. My grandmother made sure of that. She had me up every Sunday morning before the sun was even fully out, dressed in my best clothes, sitting in the third pew from the front at Greater Bethel Church like it was our assigned seats. And honestly, it kind of was. Nobody sat in Grandma Delvine's pew. Nobody. She would give you a look that could stop a freight train if you tried. Faith was everything where I came from. It was the air we breathed. It was the thing that held our family together through hard times, through loss, through the kind of struggles that would have broken people who did not have something solid to stand on. And I am grateful for that foundation. I genuinely am. But let me be honest with you, and I mean really honest, the kind of honest that makes you a little uncomfortable, the kind of honest that real growth requires. Because what I am about to share with you today is not something I learned in a theology class or read out of a commentary. This is something I learned through my own life, through my own failures, through years of wondering why I felt so disconnected from God, even though I was doing all the right things on the outside. I was going to church. I was reading my Bible. I was praying. I was serving in ministry. I was doing everything that looked right from the outside. But inside, in the quiet moments, especially at night when everything got still and I was alone in my bedroom, I felt this distance, this gap between me and God that I could not explain and could not seem to close no matter what I tried. I would lie in my bed at night and pray, and my prayers felt like they were bouncing off the ceiling, like they were not going anywhere, like something was blocking the signal. And I could not figure out what it was. And I spent years, years walking around with that low-grade spiritual frustration, that feeling of being stuck, that feeling of going through the motions but not experiencing the real thing, the peace that passes understanding that Paul talks about in Philippians. I had read about it, I had preached about it, I had seen other people walk in it, but I could not seem to access it myself. And for the longest time, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought maybe I was not spiritual enough. Maybe I did not have enough faith. Maybe God was just distant by nature, and that closeness I was looking for was not really available to regular people like me. But then something happened. And it did not happen in a church service. It did not happen during a powerful worship experience or a conference or a revival. It happened in my bedroom, in the most ordinary, mundane, everyday moment you could imagine. I was lying in bed one night, phone in hand like usual, scrolling through social media at like midnight, and something in my spirit just said stop. Not audibly, not in a booming voice from the sky, just this quiet, firm, undeniable nudge deep inside me that said stop. And for once in my life, I actually listened. I put the phone down. I lay there in the dark and the silence. And in that silence, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt it. That presence, that peace, that sense of God being right there in the room with me. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. God had not been far away. God had not been withholding himself from me. I had been so busy, so distracted, so caught up in all the noise that I had been blocking my own access, the habits I had built in my bedroom, the things I was doing every single night before I went to sleep. They were creating walls between me and the peace that God had always been ready to give me. And that revelation changed my life. Not overnight, not perfectly, not without stumbling and falling back into old patterns, more times than I want to admit. But it changed the trajectory. It gave me something to work with. It gave me a direction. And that is what I want to give you today, because I know I am not the only one who has felt that distance. I know I am not the only one who has gone through the motions of faith and still felt empty. I know there are people watching this right now who love God with everything they have, but cannot figure out why their bedroom feels more like a place of anxiety than a place of rest, why they cannot sleep, why their minds will not quiet down, why the peace they are looking for seems just out of reach. So today I want to talk to you about 3 habits that could be blocking your peace with God in your bedroom. 3 things that most of us do without even thinking about them. 3 patterns that seem totally normal and harmless, but are actually creating real distance between you and the spiritual rest that God designed your bedroom to be a place of. And I want to talk about this not to make you feel guilty not to add more stuff to your already overwhelming spiritual to-do list, but to give you real, practical, honest insight that you can actually use. Because I believe that when you understand what is blocking your peace, you can remove it. And when you remove it, that peace comes rushing in like it has been waiting right outside the door the whole time. Because it has been, let me start from the beginning though, because I think it is important to lay some groundwork before we get into the 3 habits. I want to talk about why the bedroom matters so much spiritually. Because I think a lot of us have never really thought about this. We think about our church as our spiritual space. We think about our prayer closet, our quiet time spot, wherever we go to intentionally connect with God. But the bedroom, we think of it as just a practical space, a place where we crash after a long day, a place where we recharge physically. And that is true, it absolutely is that. But it is also so much more than that. Think about it this way. Of all the rooms in your house, your bedroom is the room where you are most consistently yourself. There is no performance in the bedroom. There is no mask. There is no version of you that you put on for other people. It is just you, your raw, unfiltered, real self. It is where you take off everything you wore for the world that day, literally and figuratively, and you are just you. And that rawness, that vulnerability, that is actually sacred. That is actually the state that God is most interested in meeting you in. Not the polished Sunday morning version of you. Not the version of you that has it all together and says all the right things. The real you, the tired you, the struggling you, the honest you. And here is the thing about peace with God. Real peace, not just the surface level, feeling good kind, but the deep, settled, unshakable kind. That kind of peace is built in the quiet. It is built in the still. It is built in the moments when you are not performing, not producing, not hustling, not grinding. It is built in rest. And your bedroom is supposed to be the primary location where that happens. God designed rest. He built it into creation on the 7th day. He commands it in Scripture. He promises it to His people. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That is not just a metaphor. That is a real invitation to a real experience that God wants you to have every single night in your bedroom. But here is the problem. Most of us have filled our bedrooms with so much stuff, physical stuff, emotional stuff, digital stuff, relational stuff, that there is no room for the rest God is offering. We have cluttered up the very space where peace is supposed to live with things that produce the opposite of peace. And then we wonder why we are anxious. We wonder why we cannot sleep. We wonder why we feel so far from God even though we love Him and we are trying. It is because the habits we have built in that space are working against the peace we are seeking. Now let me tell you about the first habit that blocks your peace with God in your bedroom. And this one is going to hit close to home for most of you because it hits close to home for me too. The first habit is what I call the scroll and crash routine. This is when the last thing you do before you close your eyes every night is scroll through your phone. Social media, news, YouTube, TikTok, whatever your platform of choice is. You lie in bed, phone in hand, and you scroll until your eyes get heavy and you just kind of drift off. Maybe you fall asleep with the phone still in your hand. Maybe you put it down right before you crash. But either way, the last thing your mind consumed before sleep was a feed full of content that had nothing to do with God and everything to do with the world. Now I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I am not here to tell you that social media is evil. I am not here to tell you that your phone is the devil. I use social media. I have a phone. I am making a video on the internet right now, so clearly I am not anti-technology. That is not the point. The point is about sequence. The point is about what you are feeding your mind and your spirit in those crucial final moments before sleep, because those moments matter more than most of us realize. Here is what I mean. There is this concept in neuroscience about the hypnagogic state. That is the state right on the edge of sleep, the transition between being awake and being asleep. And what researchers have found is that in that state, your mind is incredibly receptive, like it is in a kind of open, almost dreamlike state where information goes in really deep, really sticks. And what you feed your mind in that state, what you put in right before you cross over into sleep, tends to process deeply during the night. It shapes your dreams. It shapes your subconscious processing. It shapes how you feel when you wake up. Now think about what most of us are feeding our minds in that state. We are scrolling through arguments on Twitter. We are watching videos that make us laugh, but also sometimes make us feel bad about our own lives. We are reading news that is almost always designed to provoke an emotional reaction, usually anxiety or outrage, because that is what drives engagement. We are looking at highlight reels of other people's lives and feeling subtly inadequate. We are exposing ourselves to comparison, to fear, to controversy, to everything except the peace of God. And then we close our eyes and wonder why we cannot rest. We wonder why our minds race. We wonder why we wake up anxious. And spiritually, here is what I want you to understand. That final moment before sleep is actually one of the most intimate moments of your day. It is a moment of surrender. It is a moment when you are letting go of consciousness, letting go of control, trusting that when you wake up, everything will still be okay. That is a profoundly spiritual moment. And who or what you surrender to in that moment matters deeply. When you hand that moment over to your phone, when you let a social media algorithm be the last voice that speaks into your spirit before you sleep, you are essentially choosing what gets to be with you in the night. And a social media algorithm does not have your peace in mind. It has your engagement in mind. Those are very different things. But when you give that moment to God, when the last thing you do before you close your eyes is pray, or read a scripture, or just sit in quiet and invite His presence, something shifts. You are essentially saying, God, I am about to go unconscious for several hours. I am about to be completely vulnerable. I am trusting you with this time. And that posture of surrender, that invitation, creates the conditions for real peace, the kind of peace that the Bible describes as surpassing understanding, the kind that you wake up in even when your circumstances have not changed. I want to tell you about my homeboy Terrence from Chicago. Me and T go way back. We grew up in similar households, both raised in the church, both had that strong faith foundation from our families. But Terrence hit a stretch in his late 20s where he was just spiritually dry, not backslid, not off the rails, still going to church, still believing, but just dry, empty, going through the motions. He told me he would lie awake at night and just feel this low-grade anxiety that he could not shake. His mind would race. He would replay conversations from the day. He would worry about money, about his career, about his relationship. He would scroll his phone for hours trying to distract himself from the anxiety, which, of course, only made the anxiety worse. And he felt completely disconnected from God, like God was somewhere out there but not close, not accessible. We had a long conversation one night, and I asked him what his nighttime routine looked like. And he described exactly what I just described. Phone until he crashed, every night without fail. And I asked him one question. I said, T, when was the last time you actually talked to God before you went to sleep? Like really talked to Him. Not a quick Lord bless me, amen, but actually talked. And he got real quiet. And then he said, man, I cannot even remember, so we made a deal. I told him, try this for 1 week, just 1 week, no phone after 10 o'clock at night. And before you close your eyes, just talk to God for 10 minutes, not a formal prayer, not King James language, just talk like you would talk to me. Tell Him what you are worried about. Tell Him what hurt today. Tell Him what you are grateful for. Tell Him what you need. Just talk, and then be quiet for a few minutes and let Him respond. Not necessarily in words, just in peace, just in presence. Terrence called me 4 days later and he sounded like a different dude. He said, man, I do not know what happened, but I have slept better this week than I have in 2 years. He said, the anxiety is not gone, but it is different. It is quieter. He said, it feels like there is something solid underneath me now when I go to bed, like I am not just falling into the dark alone. He said, it feels like God is actually in my room. And I said, T, He always was. You just gave Him some space to make Himself known. That is what the scroll and crash habit steals from you. It steals your capacity to experience God's presence in the room. Not because God leaves when you look at your phone, but because your spirit is so cluttered, so stimulated, so full of noise from the feed that you cannot perceive what is already there. It is like trying to have a conversation in a room where the music is blasting. The other person is not gone. They are right there. But you cannot hear them over the noise. And I want to give you something practical here because I am not just trying to talk at you. I want to actually help you. What if you tried something different tonight? What if instead of reaching for your phone the moment you get into bed, you reach for something else? Maybe a Bible, maybe a journal, maybe nothing at all and just silence. What if you gave God the last 30 minutes before you sleep? Not as a religious obligation, not as another item on your spiritual checklist, but as an actual choice to prioritize His presence over the algorithm's agenda. What if you lay down and said, God, I am here, I am tired, I am yours, talk to me. And then you actually waited. I promise you something will shift. It may not be dramatic the first night. It may not feel like a big spiritual experience. It might just feel like quiet. But that quiet is actually the thing you have been missing. That quiet is where God lives in your daily life. That quiet is the gateway to the peace that surpasses understanding. And once you start experiencing it regularly, once you start building it into a nighttime rhythm, you will wonder how you ever lived without it. The scroll and crash habit will start to feel exactly like what it is, a counterfeit comfort, a cheap substitute for something infinitely better. Now let me talk about the second habit that blocks your peace with God in your bedroom. And this one is a little more internal than the first one. The first habit was about what we do with our devices. This one is about what we do with our hearts. The second habit is what I call carrying the weight to bed. This is the habit of taking every unresolved conflict, every offense, every grievance, every wound from the day, and dragging it right into your bedroom with you and sleeping with it, letting it marinate overnight in your spirit. And most of us do this without even realizing we are doing it because it does not feel like a choice. It just feels like how things are. You had a rough day. Someone said something that stung. You had a conflict with your spouse or your coworker or your sibling. You feel misunderstood, undervalued, overlooked. And you cannot just flip a switch and make those feelings go away. So you carry them to bed. And there they sit between you and your rest, between you and your peace, between you and God. Now, let me be real clear about something. I am not saying your feelings are wrong. I am not saying you should not feel hurt when you have been hurt or angry when you have been wronged. Those feelings are valid. They are human. They are appropriate responses to real experiences. But there is a difference between feeling something and feeding it. There is a difference between acknowledging a wound and camping out in it all night long. And what the habit of carrying the weight to bed does is it keeps you in a constant state of emotional activation that is completely incompatible with the peace of God. Think about what happens to your body when you are carrying unresolved anger or hurt to bed. Your cortisol levels are elevated. Your nervous system is in a mild fight or flight state. Your muscles are tense. Your breathing is shallow. Your mind is running through replays of the conflict, re-arguing it in your head, drafting the perfect response you should have given, anticipating the next confrontation. You are not at rest. Your body is not at rest. Your spirit is not at rest. And in that state, peace is basically inaccessible. You cannot open yourself to the presence of God when every part of you is braced for a fight. The Bible is actually super direct about this. Ephesians 4:26 says, "Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry." That verse gets quoted a lot in conversations about marriage and conflict resolution, which is appropriate. But I want to zoom out and look at the broader principle. Do not carry anger past sundown. There is wisdom in that beyond just interpersonal relationships. There is a spiritual principle about what happens to your soul when you refuse to release the weight of the day before you sleep, when you choose to hold on to offense instead of releasing it, when you decide that your right to be angry is more important than your need for peace. And here is the thing about forgiveness that I think gets misunderstood a lot. Forgiveness is not primarily about the other person, it is about you. When you forgive someone before you go to sleep, when you release the offense and hand it to God, you are not saying what they did was okay. You are not pretending it did not hurt. You are not letting them off the hook legally or relationally. You are saying, I am not going to let this thing they did steal my peace tonight. I am not going to hand over my rest, my sleep, my connection with God to this offense. I am going to trust God with this situation and let Him handle it while I rest. That is not weakness. That is actually one of the most powerful things a person can do. Let me tell you about someone I know. Her name is Keisha and she lives in Dallas. Keisha is one of the most genuinely faithful people I have ever met. She loves God with her whole heart. She serves in her church. She is the kind of person who everybody goes to when they need prayer because her prayers are real and they hit different. But for years, Keisha struggled with something she was almost embarrassed to talk about: chronic sleeplessness. She would lie awake for hours every night. She would finally fall asleep and then wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and not be able to get back to sleep. She was exhausted all the time. She thought something was physically wrong with her. She went to her doctor, they ran tests, everything came back fine. And one day she was having a conversation with her mentor, an older woman at her church who had known Keisha for years. And the mentor asked her a simple question. She said, "Keisha, how do you end your evenings? What does the hour before you sleep look like?" And Keisha started describing her routine, and without realizing it, she said, "Well, I usually go over the day in my head, think about what happened, think about the conversations I had, think about whether I said the right things or did the right things, think about the people who upset me or let me down." And her mentor stopped her right there and said, "Baby, that is your problem." She explained to Keisha that she had developed a habit of essentially conducting a nightly tribunal in her bedroom, putting herself and everyone else in her life on trial before she went to sleep, examining every word, every interaction, every slight, every disappointment. And while that felt like being thoughtful and reflective, what it was actually doing was keeping her spirit in a constant state of judgment and unrest. She was never releasing the day, she was just processing it over and over in an endless loop. And in that state, God could not give her rest, because she was not positioned to receive it. Her mentor gave her a practice, and it is something I want to share with you because it genuinely works. Before you go to sleep every night, do what Keisha's mentor called a release ritual. And it is simple. You just go through the day in your mind, not to analyze it, not to re-argue it, not to judge yourself or anyone else, but to release it. For every person who hurt you or frustrated you that day, you say, "God, I release them to you. I release this situation to you. I trust you with it. I am not going to carry this into the night." For every mistake you made, everything you wish you had said or done differently, you say, "God, I release this to you. I receive your forgiveness. I forgive myself. I am not carrying this into the night." And for every fear, every worry, every anxious thought about tomorrow, you say, "God, I release this to you. I trust you with my tomorrow. I am not carrying this into the night." Keisha started doing this every night, just 5 minutes before bed, just a simple intentional act of releasing the day to God. And within 2 weeks, she said it was like somebody had lifted 100-pound weight off her chest at bedtime. She started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. And more than that, she said she started waking up with this sense of lightness that she had not felt since she was a kid. This sense of God being close and present and real in her daily life. And that is what I want you to understand about this habit. Carrying the weight to bed does not just steal your sleep. It steals your sense of God's nearness, because you cannot experience the peace of God while you are holding on to the things that God has asked you to hand over to Him. Cast your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. That is 1 Peter 5:7. It is not a suggestion, it is an invitation. It is God saying, "Give that to me." You were not built to carry that. Hand it over and rest. But if you have developed the habit of holding instead of releasing, if you have spent years being the person who takes everything to bed with you and lies there processing it all night, that habit is creating a wall between you and the peace God is trying to give you. And the invitation tonight is to try something different, to practice releasing, to give God the weight of the day before you close your eyes. Not perfectly, not all at once, but intentionally. One thing at a time, one person at a time, one worry at a time. Hand it over and see what happens to the atmosphere in your bedroom when you stop carrying what was never yours to carry overnight. I also wanted to talk about something related to this habit that does not get discussed enough. And that is the habit of going to bed in conflict with your spouse or your housemate or whoever shares your living space. Now, I know the old advice is never go to bed angry. And I think that advice is right in principle, but sometimes practically impossible, because conflicts do not always resolve neatly before bedtime. Sometimes you are in the middle of something real, and there is no quick fix, and the clock keeps moving toward midnight. And I am not going to tell you that you have to resolve every conflict before you sleep, because that is not always realistic. But here is what is realistic. Before you go to bed, even in the middle of an unresolved conflict, you can make a choice about your posture. You can choose to say to the other person, or even just to God in your own heart, I love you and we are going to work through this, but I am choosing not to let this become a fortress tonight. I am choosing not to let this conflict build a wall between us that we have to tear down in the morning. We can disagree and still be for each other. We can be hurt and still be committed to each other. That posture, that choosing to remain open even in the middle of conflict, is one of the most powerful peace-preserving things you can do in your bedroom. And it creates space for God to move in the situation overnight in ways that fighting and stewing and building emotional fortresses never will. Now let me move into the third habit, because this one is the one that I think is the most subtle and in some ways the most powerful of all three. The third habit that blocks your peace with God in your bedroom is what I want to call the independence habit. And this one is sneaky because it does not look like a problem from the outside. In fact, it looks like being responsible. It looks like being self-sufficient. It looks like being a mature adult who has their life together. But spiritually, it is one of the biggest barriers to peace that I have ever encountered in my own life and in the lives of people I know. The independence habit in the bedroom looks like this. You go to bed alone with your plans, your worries, your agenda, your strategy for handling everything in your life, and you do not include God in any of it. Not because you do not believe in God, not because you have rejected faith, but because somewhere along the way you have developed this functional independence where God is someone you acknowledge generally and call on in emergencies, but not someone you actually consult in the daily, ordinary, mundane rhythms of your life, including the rhythm of sleep, including the rhythm of rest, including the rhythm of what you do with your nights. And here is how this plays out in practical terms. You lie down at night and your mind immediately goes to tomorrow. What do I have to do? How am I going to handle that situation at work? What is the plan for this problem I am facing? How do I fix this? How do I manage that? How do I make this happen? And you lie there running through the scenarios, making the mental lists, trying to think your way to solutions, trying to generate enough certainty and control through the sheer force of your own mental activity that you can finally feel safe enough to relax. But here is the brutal truth about that approach. It does not work, because certainty through self-reliance is a mirage. You can think about your problems all night long and not come up with one single thing that actually gives you the peace you are looking for, because peace does not come from having all the answers. Peace comes from trusting the one who does. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. That word acknowledge in the original Hebrew means to know, to recognize, to be intimate with. In all your ways, including the way you go to bed at night, including the way you approach the night and the rest and the quiet, recognize him. Include him. Do not just go solo into the dark. Acknowledge that he is there and that he is in charge, and that you can trust him with the things that you cannot control. The independence habit, the habit of going to bed in self-reliance mode, keeps you in a posture of striving even when your body is supposed to be resting. And that striving is the opposite of the Sabbath rest that God designed for human beings. The whole concept of Sabbath, the whole principle of rest that runs from Genesis through the New Testament, is built on trust. You can only truly rest when you trust that things will be okay while you are resting, when you trust that God is awake even when you are asleep, when you trust that his purposes will not be derailed by your decision to lie down and let go for a few hours. Psalm 121:3 says, "He who watches over you will not slumber, he will not sleep," which means you have permission to let go. But if you have the independence habit, if you have this deep-seated need to be in control, to have all the answers, to figure everything out before you can feel okay, then rest becomes almost impossible. Because true rest requires surrender. It requires saying, I do not have all the answers, and I am okay with that tonight. It requires trusting someone outside of yourself with the things that are too big for you. And if you have not built that trust in your daily relationship with God, if God is more of an insurance policy than an actual present companion in your life, that surrender is going to feel terrifying instead of peaceful. I want to tell you about a guy named Deshaun from Houston. Deshaun is the kind of dude who has it together from the outside. Good job, beautiful family, active in his church, leads a small group, the whole deal. But Deshaun told me once, in a real honest moment, that he had not slept well in about 5 years. He would lie awake every night with his brain just running hot, going over his finances, going over his business decisions, going over his relationships, thinking about what could go wrong, what he needed to do better, what he was missing. He said it felt like his brain had a motor that just would not turn off. And he said he prayed, but his prayers mostly sounded like him telling God what he needed God to do, and then immediately going back to trying to figure out how to make it happen himself. And one night, Deshaun said he just hit a wall. He was lying there at 2 a.m, exhausted but wired, and he said something in him just broke open. He said he started crying, which surprised him because he was not a guy who cried much, and he just said out loud in the dark, "God, I cannot do this anymore. I am tired of trying to carry all of this by myself. I do not know what I am doing. I need you to actually be in charge of this stuff because I am clearly not handling it." And he said in that moment, something shifted. He said the room felt different. He said the anxiety that had been his constant companion for 5 years suddenly felt lighter. Not gone, but lighter. Like something had come in and taken part of the load. And he slept, like actually slept. And in the morning he woke up and said it was the first time in years he had woken up feeling like things were going to be okay without being able to explain why, without having solved any of the problems he had been losing sleep over. They were all still there in the morning. The financial pressure, the business decisions, all of it. But there was something underneath him now, a foundation that was not there before. And he said it was because for the first time he had actually given it to God instead of just telling God about it while still holding on to it. That is the independence habit breaking. That is what happens when you trade self-reliance for God-reliance in the bedroom. And I want to be really practical here again because I want you to be able to take action on this and not just feel good about the idea of it. The practice that changed things for Deshaun and for me and for a lot of people I know is simple. Before you go to sleep, you take what I call an inventory of your concerns, not to analyze them, not to strategize about them, but just to name them honestly to God and then hand them over. You say, God, here is what I'm worried about. Here is what feels too big for me. Here is what I do not know how to handle, and I am giving it to you tonight. I am not taking it back. I am not lying here trying to solve it while I am supposed to be sleeping. I am trusting you with it. And then you practice the posture of releasing your grip on it. And if you reach for it again, if the anxiety creeps back in, you just repeat the prayer. I already gave that to you. I am not taking it back. You have got it. I am resting. This practice sounds simple, and it is. But it is not always easy because it requires a level of trust in God's character that has to be built over time. And if you have had experiences that made it hard to trust, if you have felt let down or abandoned or like God was not really there when you needed Him, this kind of surrender is going to require some healing first. And that is okay. That is a real and valid part of the journey. But I want to say to you, even if your trust in God has been shaken, even if you have been through things that made you question whether He is really good and really present, the invitation is still open. You can come to Him with your broken trust. You can say, God, I want to trust you, but I am struggling. Help me trust you. That is an honest prayer, and He honors honest prayers. Now I want to bring all three of these together because I think they are actually connected in a deeper way than they might seem. The scroll and crash habit, the carrying the weight to bed habit, and the independence habit, all three of them are really expressions of the same underlying issue. They are all ways of avoiding the vulnerability that real peace requires. Think about it. When you scroll your phone until you crash, you are avoiding the quiet. You are avoiding the stillness. You are avoiding the moment when it is just you and God and the honest state of your soul, because that moment can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're carrying things you have not dealt with, or if you have been running from God in ways you have not fully acknowledged. When you carry the weight to bed, when you replay the day and hold on to the offenses and the anxieties, you are also avoiding something. You are avoiding surrender. You are avoiding the vulnerability of saying, God, I cannot handle this and I need you to. You are keeping yourself in control mode because letting go feels risky. And when you operate in independence mode, when you lie there running all your own plans and strategies and solutions, you are doing the same thing. You are avoiding the trust fall. You are avoiding the moment where you genuinely let go. and let God be God over your life. All three habits are defenses. They are walls that we build, usually without realizing it, to protect ourselves from the vulnerability that comes with genuine intimacy with God. And the thing about walls is that they do not just keep out the things that could hurt you, they also keep out the things that could heal you. They keep out the peace, they keep out the presence, they keep out the rest that God is literally trying to give you every single night. And here's what I want you to hear. God is not complicated about this. He is not making you jump through hoops to access His peace. He is not withholding rest from you as some kind of test or punishment. The peace is there, the presence is there, the invitation is always open. Come to me and I will give you rest. He means that. He genuinely means that. But you have to come. You have to show up. You have to lower the walls and create space for what He is offering. Your bedroom is not just a place where you sleep. It is a place where you can meet with God every single night. Not in a formal church service kind of way, not in a performance kind of way, but in the most real, raw, honest, vulnerable way possible. Because that is who you are in your bedroom. That is the version of you that God is most interested in reaching. And when you start treating that space as sacred, when you start treating the moments before sleep as an opportunity to connect rather than to scroll and stew and strategize, something shifts in your spiritual life that you cannot get anywhere else. I want to pray with you before I wrap up, and I want to encourage you to pray this out loud if you can, because there is something about speaking faith out loud that moves things. It shifts the atmosphere. It shifts your own spirit. So wherever you are, if you can, say this with me. Father God, I thank you for the gift of rest. I thank you that you designed my body and my soul to need rest, and that you have promised to be present in that rest. I come to you right now with honesty about the habits that have been blocking your peace in my bedroom. Lord, I acknowledge that I have been scrolling when I should have been seeking. I have been carrying what I should have been releasing. I have been striving when I should have been trusting. And I ask you to forgive me for those habits and to help me replace them with something better. Tonight and every night going forward, I choose to give you the last moments before sleep. I choose to reach for your presence instead of my phone. I choose to make the final words of my day words directed at you rather than words consumed from a feed. I declare that the last thing I feed my spirit at night will be your word, your presence, and your peace. I choose tonight to release the weight of this day to you. Every offense, every hurt, every disappointment, every conflict, every mistake, I release it all. I am not carrying it into the night. I trust you with every unresolved situation in my life. I trust you with the people who have hurt me. I trust you with the things I cannot fix. I am handing them over and I am receiving your peace in exchange. And I choose tonight to acknowledge you in my bedroom, to recognize you as present and real and in charge of my life. I am releasing my grip on my plans, my strategies, my need to have everything figured out. I trust you with my tomorrow. I trust you with my future. I trust you with the things that feel too big for me. You are not sleeping. You are watching over me. And because you are awake, I can rest. I declare that my bedroom is a place of peace and healing. It is a place where I encounter you. It is a place of genuine rest for my body, my mind, and my spirit. No habit, no distraction, no anxiety will steal that from me anymore. I am choosing presence over performance. I am choosing rest over striving. I am choosing you over everything else that wants my attention at night. Restore my sleep, Lord. Restore my peace. Restore my sense of your nearness in the everyday rhythm of my life. I receive your rest right now, in Jesus' name. Amen. If you prayed that with me, something is already shifting. Peace does not always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes quietly. Sometimes it comes as a subtle sense of okayness that you cannot fully explain. But it is real, and it is available to you every single night. Let me give you the practical steps one more time, because I want you to walk away from this with something you can actually do tonight. For the scroll and crash habit, starting tonight, put your phone down 30 minutes before you go to sleep. Charge it across the room or in another room entirely. And in those 30 minutes, either read your Bible, pray, journal, or just sit in silence and invite God's presence. You do not have to be eloquent. You do not have to use fancy language. Just talk to Him like He is in the room, because He is. For the carrying the weight to bed habit, before you close your eyes tonight, Take 5 minutes to do a release. Go through the day in your mind, and for every heavy thing you are holding, name it to God and hand it over. Say it out loud if you can. I release this person to you. I release this situation to you. I release this worry to you. Keep going until you feel the weight start to lift. And if it comes back, release it again. There is no limit on how many times you can hand something to God. For the independence habit, before you sleep tonight, take inventory of the 3 biggest things that are making you anxious or uncertain right now. Name them to God specifically, and then practice handing them over. Say, God, you have this. I trust you with this. I am resting tonight because you are not resting. You are awake and you are working, and I trust you. These 3 practices are not complicated. They are not burdensome. They will not take hours out of your night, but they will transform your bedroom from a place of anxiety and restlessness into a sanctuary of real peace. And that transformation will ripple out into every area of your life. Because when you are sleeping well, when you are meeting with God in the night, when you are waking up rested and at peace, you carry that into your day. You carry it into your relationships, your work, your ministry, your parenting, your everything. The bedroom is the foundation. Get the bedroom right, and everything else gets better. And look, I want to say one more thing before I close, and that is this. You are not behind. You have not missed it. No matter how long you have been carrying these habits, no matter how long the restlessness and the distance have been present, you have not missed anything that cannot be restored. God is not looking at you with disappointment because you have been scrolling instead of praying. He is looking at you with an open invitation. Come. Come right now. Come as you are, with your tired eyes and your racing mind and your heavy heart. Come to the bedroom tonight differently than you have been coming. Come expectant, come surrendered, come willing to be present with Him in the quiet. And I promise you, based on His word and based on what I have seen in my own life and in the lives of people I know and love, He will meet you there. My name is Marcus Delvine from Atlanta, Georgia. And I want to tell you that the peace you have been looking for is not out of reach. It is not reserved for people who have it all together. It is not something you earn by being spiritual enough or faithful enough or disciplined enough. It is a gift, freely given, already available, already paid for. And your bedroom, that ordinary room where you sleep every night, is one of the most powerful places you can access it. Stop letting habits steal what God is trying to give you. Lower the phone, release the weight, trust Him with your tomorrow, and rest, real rest, the kind that heals you, the kind that restores you, the kind that makes you wake up knowing that you are not in this alone and that the God who made you is awake and working on your behalf while you sleep. That kind of rest is yours. Go get it tonight. God bless you.